Jennifer Lombard. Is from the Green Building Council of South Africa. And she's one of the 2 faculty members that have been given training the last 2 days. In the absence of Brian Wilson of the Green Building Council of South Africa, the CEO, she's also representing him.
I said earlier that I'm not very happy that this is recorded because I'm heavily medicated today. So you'll excuse if I sound a little different to what I've sounded over the last 2 days. Today I'll be speaking on, just giving you a brief overview on what our interiors tool is all about. Sorry, I should drink some of this water quickly. So our interiors tool is a new tool which we've just launched. And it's not a tool yet that has had a local context report done in Namibia. So I'm encouraging you guys to think about using it in Namibia. I'm trying to find my mouse as well. And this is where it fits in. Okay, you guys know about the new building tools, and in Namibia you've done a local context report on the office tool. There are still the multiple building, multi-use and public education and retail centre. Then there's the interiors tool and the existing building tool. So in the last 2 days we've done the accredited professional courses for new build office, for new build, all of them, as well as the existing building tool. And as I said, this is just a brief overview on interiors. There. So interiors, just to give you an idea, interiors can be done at any stage. Obviously you have to have a building, so you have to have but you can do it at any stage. You don't, and it's mostly aimed at your tenants. So it's just on what you are putting into your building and what your tenants has control over. Okay, so sometimes it will depend on what type of lease you have with your landlord. So it's what fit out you have, what control you have as the tenant. But it's also all building types. So there are not very many building types that are excluded from the interiors tool. And it considers whatever's going into your space. So it's heavily weighted on the materials category. But we'll get into what type of points go into the different categories. It's also, I just want to, I'm going through quite quickly because it gets pretty technical, and I know a lot of you are kind of at the courses, so I don't want you guys to get stuck on the detail which we went into in the last 2 days. But what's nice about this tool as well is that if you have a building with lots of tenants, each tenant can do the tool. You don't have to do it as a whole building. Each tenancy can do it. So it can be multi-tenanted. If you have an office which has 5 different tenants in it, each of those tenants can do it and get 5 different ratings. And again, like the other ratings, only the EVP one goes from 1 to 6 stars. So the interiors also is a 4 to 6 star rating only. And here's when we have a look at the scores. Scores per category, you can have a look here. Here's my little cheat sheet. The materials one is the highest score. So that's on 24 points out of a possible 100. Then you get energy, which we've all mentioned is very important. The third highest category is IEQ, which obviously is one. Energy, indoor environmental quality is one, obviously from a tenant perspective, that we also are saying is one that's very important. And then fourth is water. on 12 points. Okay, and then fifth is management. So that gives you an idea of from an interiors perspective, what are the most important categories. So it goes from 24 points for materials, 22 points for energy, 20 points for IEQ, and then 10.5 points for management. So that just gives you an idea from an interiors perspective what we imagine as being the most important categories. This slide just gives you an idea of what a project could have achieved, and from a management perspective, they scored 6 points. If you add up all the points that they've achieved, they get a full score of 56 out of 100 before the innovation. They got 2 points in innovation, and therefore they got a total score out of 100 in the end, because those innovation points are bonus points. That's 59. That also means that if you go back, they just missed a 5-star rating by the 1 point. Then I just want to hop into eligibility criteria from an interiors perspective. They've got 4 eligibility criteria: spatial differentiation, space use, conditional requirement, and the timing of the certification. If we dive into spatial differentiation, it must be a clearly distinctive, visual and functional. So does that make sense? So it must have a contained area, it must be defined, okay? It must be a whole fit out. By that I mean it can't just be an electrical upgrade or you can't just be putting furniture in. You must be looking at all eight categories. That's what I'm meaning by that. And then it can be certified of a distinct floor. So, or a building or department. So even though that sometimes might mean, you might think I might be contradicting myself by the first point, all I'm saying there is it must be defined. The area must be defined. And then the last point is shared building services do not affect eligibility. So it's just making absolutely sure in this spatial differentiating area that we must define the area and make absolutely sure that in the interiors fit out tool that we define that area absolutely, and that somebody who's coming into the area knows that defined area and can identify it, and then we can certify that area. And then as far as the space use, it's something which I mentioned before. The interiors tool has a lot. There's almost nothing we can't certify under the interiors fit out. So these are all space categories which are in the standards, and yeah, there really is hardly anything we can't rate under the interiors tool. There's lots there. so don't worry too much from an interiors perspective that there might not be something.
Is it residential?
Residential isn't something we rate yet. There is something we're going to launch this year in conjunction with the IFC, which is called EDGE, which we're having a look at the moment, to rate residential completely separately. Then we'll hop onto conditional requirement, which is the same as the EVP tools. The only conditional requirement is that there must be an accredited professional on interiors to help the project team out. Only one little conditional requirement. And then the timing of the certification, round 1 must be done 12 months, within 12 months of practical completion of the project, of the fit-out. Simple. And again, exactly the same 8 criteria as they always are within Green Star projects. And then I'm just going to highlight the differences. What's slightly different in the interiors tools? So we've got the same things which we normally have: accredited professional, obviously that's the conditional requirement; commissioning and tuning, obviously a big thing; occupational user guides, always great; environmental management; construction waste management, obviously a big thing when we're doing a interiors fit out, that we look at that quite carefully and manage that well. Workspace efficiency is something that obviously when you're looking at an interior and how you're fitting it out is very important for for an interior fit out, and is slightly different from, say, something that you look at from an EVP tool. Green leasing we've heard of quite a few times, and learning resources we've heard of quite a few times. This is just an example. It's not necessarily an interiors project, but it's ideas. This is an Australian example where they have used their space incredibly well and changed their work efficiency. So let's go back to it. They've done this Man 6 workspace efficiency exceptionally well, and they have changed their space completely from iSpace to WeSpace. It's what they call iSpace to WeSpace. So they've changed from individual desks to shared spaces and active work desks, and changed their space allocation. So where they've reduced their workspace by about 16%. And the employees actually didn't feel crammed because they had other spaces to go to. They felt more free to be able to use other work areas. They didn't feel like they were jammed into spaces. So they would score very, very highly on that Man 6 category, even though they reduced footprint. They would also have scored quite highly on what was the other category? I can't remember which category it would fall in, but their post-occupancy survey showed that from a production point of view, their staff increased production by about 15%. Just by using those IQ factors incredibly well. Sorry, these IEQ factors incredibly well. These ones also are pretty similar to most of the other tools, except the last two at the end, which are new and haven't gone into any of the other tools. So obviously there's acoustics, visual comfort, lighting comfort, thermal comfort, all of that type of stuff. But ergonomics and indoor plants have been moved into interiors as well, which we saw as important for this tool. Just to let you guys know, us as the Green Building Council of South Africa have moved into our own new-ish offices. It's about 18 months, I think, since we moved into our new office, just before I started and before we designed this tool. So we just used what we saw as green practices, and afterwards put ourselves through our pilot project, and we should get our round one results probably in the next 2 weeks or so to see how well we've done using our own tool, which will be interesting to see. But I'll show you at the end just what ideas we used in our own project, using our own things. So this is just a picture of what our offices look like, but you'll see a few more other pictures in a little while. Obviously, energy is quite similar, but just tweaked slightly for what you have control over as the tenant. But it also The next slide just shows that you as the tenant also, it makes quite a difference which site you pick. So it also, as a tenant, yes, you have control over limited items, but a lot of it also depends which site you